Discover the incredible transformation. A paralyzed woman's hidden strength inspires a cowboy's journey. Sarah Bennett stared at her blinking cursor, the words swirling in her mind as the dusty clamor of Texas heat drummed against her small window. Each stroke of her pen felt like an act of rebellion, a declaration that defied the ordinary. She had poured blood, sweat, and tears into this blog, every post laden with the complexities of her life as a single mother building a future from the bones of devastation. The world saw her wheelchair, a burden she fought to carry gracefully, but behind it lay a raw power, a depth of spirit forged through hardship that she yearned to communicate. But tonight, amidst the fading light, doubt spiraled like a tornado in her mind. Would her truth resonate, or would it only magnify the whispers of judgment from that whispering crowd of parents? Their disapproving gazes felt like brandishing swords everywhere she turned. Could she really ensure a brighter path for Caleb, a scholarship that would lead him away from the confines of their small town and its suffocating expectations? A chance to escape this life felt too heavy yet tantalizing at the same time, both an anchor and a lifeline. Her heart raced, and she bit her lip, feeling the familiar coil of anxiety tighten around her chest. No one could truly grasp the relentless cycle of growth and setback she endured. Every parent meeting loomed over her like a dark silhouette waiting to pounce. Would they ever look beyond her apparent limitations? They didn't know that her strength pulsed beneath the surface of her paralysis, that she could wield words like weapons. But doubt gnawed at her. What if her courage was not enough? Could a single blog post alter a course set by the unyielding judgment of others? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As she went back to the screen, fingers hovering hesitantly above the keyboard, Sarah felt something shift within. It was the painful yearning for validation, the hollow ache of feeling unseen. Jake Thompson had started reading her blog, his rugged charm and easy smile weaving encouragement into the fabric of her loneliness. But the more she felt pulled towards him, the heavier the burden of flawed perfection pressed on her chest. What if he saw her as she saw herself, simply a woman with scars and bones that creak under burdens? The competition drew nearer, and Caleb's excitement crackled like electricity in their little home. Yet each bright grin from her son felt like an unkind reminder of her own failings. Was she strong enough to separate her anxiety from his dreams? Or would she fumble this magnificent opportunity? Her fingers trembled as thoughts swirled. If she dared to share her truth with the world, would it lead to ridicule? Or would it eventually forge the path they both deserved? In that moment of breathless introspection, she understood that her next steps could change everything, or keep them stuck in a timeless loop of self-doubt and fear. It was now or never, but the chaos within was louder than her resolve. With heart thumping, her soul reaching out, she prepared to confront each harsh reality, each judgmental sneer, swallowing hard against the urgency of her silence, ready to spill it all out into the void. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the heaviness of her resolve. Her fingers finally met the keys. She began typing, one word at a time, as the air crackled with the weight of unspoken thoughts. The echoes of self-doubt tangling with a fierce determination were almost palpable. Tonight she would not be silent. She would not let anxiety dictate her next move. The blog post unfolded, her narrative like a coiled spring gradually unwinding. She poured her heart into words, painting vivid pictures of her reality. Being a single mother in a small town isn't just challenging. It's an unraveling tapestry of expectations, doubts, and relentless dreams. I may sit in a wheelchair, but that does not define the breadth of my capabilities, she wrote, the phrases spilling out with surprising fluidity. As she clicked publish, a sensation of liberation flooded her spirit. But the wave of adrenaline didn't take long to morph into a tsunami of anxiety. Would anyone care to read it? The fear of judgment sat heavily in her chest, a nebulous threat waiting to materialize as she stared at her screen, refresh button poised under her fingertips like a loaded gun. The clock ticked away, every second feeling like an eternity. Doubt worms its way back into her consciousness, a slithering whisper urging her to reconsider. What if her truth was met with scorn? But then she thought of Caleb, his dreams and aspirations radiating from him like the sun. For him, she had to be brave, had to grieve the fear of others. An unexpected ping on her phone broke the silence, and when she glanced at it, a thrill shot through her. A notification. Someone had commented on her post. "Powerful message, Sarah. Keep sharing your truth." It was a stranger's words, yet they held the weight of validation. The comments began to trickle in like warm rain on a parched earth. Each one filled with encouragement bolstered her confidence, an unanticipated beacon amid the darkened spaces of her self-doubts. She found herself responding, her fingers dancing across the keys with newfound vigor. The once anxious woman had transformed. Her voice had emerged from the silence, strong and unwavering. In that moment, she realized the profound impact of her vulnerability, not just on others, but on herself. She had finally begun to reshape her identity, slowly pulling the threads of her life away from the past that had bound her. It was both thrilling and terrifying. She felt the spark of potential ignite her heart, urging her to think beyond mere survival and contemplate success. She wanted to write more, share lessons learned from the struggles and glories of life behind the barriers. With each propelled thought, her focus shifted from fear to aspiration. But then the reflection of her son's face drifted back into her mind, bright-eyed and innocent, poised on the edge of his own dreams. Could she give him that life, the escape away from the town and its restrictive grasp? She began compiling a list of local scholarships, each one another door, another chance. A deeper purpose ignited within Sarah, fueling her next steps. Her life was no longer solely about battling perceptions, it was about launching into action. But still there was Jake, an intricate knot of emotions intertwined with her revelation. What would he think of this bold new stride she was taking? Would her imperfections only serve to hold her back? Fear gripped her again, uncertainty nipping at the edges of her hopeful journey. Sarah paused, one deep inhale grounding her thoughts. It was time to face Jake, to share this vulnerability, this powerful new sense of purpose. Her heart began to race again, but not from fear. This time it was the thrill of potential, the anticipation of sharing who she was with someone who might, just might, understand. The path was set. The moment had come to seek not just validation, but connection. As she prepared to pick up the phone, a question echoed through her mind, charging the atmosphere with electric potential. Was she ready to let someone in, even deeper than before? The moment hung suspended in the air as Sarah stared at her phone, the weight of the decision pressing heavily upon her like a dense fog. She wondered if this new side of herself would still resonate with Jake. Had their shared experiences steeled him against the evolving person she'd become, or could he embrace her complex growth? Taking another steadying breath, she picked up the phone. Each ring felt like a countdown to a revelation, a step deeper into uncharted territory. "Hey, Jake," she said, once he answered, her voice almost steady. "Hey there, I was just thinking about you," he said, a warm lilt in his voice that flickered like a candle lighting a dark room. "I wanted to talk," she began, uncertain of how to navigate the terrain of her transformation. "About, well, everything." "You've been quiet lately," he said, and she could detect an undercurrent of concern. "You okay?" "I published a blog post. It's about my life, my struggles and aspirations as a single mother with a disability." Silence draped over the line, thick like a quilt. She could almost hear the gears turning in Jake's mind as he processed her words. "That's brave, Sarah," he finally replied, his tone shifting to cautious support. "What made you decide to share?" "Because I need to be more than what people see," she responded, the words unfurling before her. "I can't keep hiding behind this facade, thinking it keeps me safe. I want Caleb to know that it's okay to be authentic, to share your truth." Her heart raced. Vulnerability was new territory for her, but she pressed on, urgency propelling her. "But I'm scared, Jake, scared of what you'll think, or worse, what others might say." "Sarah, you've always been more than just that woman in a wheelchair," he replied, his words a gentle reassurance. "You've got this fire in you, and I've admired it. I might not fully understand your journey, but I respect you." His encouragement breathed life into her resolve, but with it surged the shadows of self-doubt. "But how can I do this? How can I inspire Caleb when my own path feels so uncertain? I think I'm stronger now, but the fear is still there." "Strength doesn't mean there's no fear," he reminded her, his voice firm but kind. "It's about facing it anyway. You're teaching him more than any words ever could, just by pursuing your dreams." Sarah inhaled slowly, the stillness of the moment grounding her. Jake's words, though simple, were a lifeline she hadn't anticipated. "What if I just fail?" she asked, a crack in her brave facade revealing her trepidation. "Then you get back up and try again. That's what life is about. And you know what? I'll be there with you through it all. You're not alone." Her chest tightened with a mixture of relief and unresolved feelings. This conversation had given her wings, yet the gnawing fear of reaching for them remained. Something had shifted within her, but how to harness this newfound courage into tangible change? She wanted to take this momentum and funnel it into real actions. More than just writing, Sarah felt a pull towards initiating dialogues in her community, leveraging her experiences to ignite conversations. But the shadows of doubt flickered in her mind. Was she truly ready for the scrutiny that might come with sharing more than just her writing? Could she withstand the criticism, or worse, the silence, of those who might still view her through a narrow lens? "Jake, I think I want to do more than write. I want to speak, to create real change. But I need to know that this isn't just a fleeting feeling." Her voice trembled, the weight of ambition settling heavily on her shoulders. "Then start small," he offered, a newfound intensity threading through his words. "Engage with your readers. Find a local group, a support circle, or workshop. You can do this." The thought ignited something deep inside Sarah. It felt both terrifying and exhilarating, an affirmation that she could venture out of the shadows and into the light. "Okay, I'll look into it," she said softly, a slow smile creeping across her face as she absorbed her own words. But as the conversation concluded and Jake's voice faded, the reality of her ambition settled uncomfortably in her chest, its enormity daunting and compelling. Was she equipped to face this new chapter? The impending challenges of vulnerability seemed overwhelming. Yet, within that fear was flickering the potential for growth. That night, Sarah lay awake, a storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. Each notion wrestled for dominance as she mapped out her path forward. The urgency to translate her passions into purpose burned brighter than ever before. But in that turbulent sea of emotions, one question stood out, heavy and relentless. Would she be able to withstand the unpredictable tide of change when the moment of truth arrived? The following day dawned brighter than usual, the sun's rays spilling through her window, illuminating both her living room and her resolve. Sarah sipped her coffee, mentally replaying her conversation with Jake. His belief in her ignited a fire she hadn't felt in years. She needed to harness it, to transform that fleeting spark into lasting change. Caleb was still asleep, a soft rumble of snores drifting from his room. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with determination. Sarah grabbed her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She could hear her heart beating a steady rhythm of hope that drowned out the whispering fears. What would it look like to speak openly about her life, to inspire others? She had no roadmap, but felt the strong desire to carve one out. Opening a new document, she labeled it Next Steps. She started with the simpler ideas: drafting a speech, finding local groups, researching workshops in her area. Each bullet point felt like a weight lifted from her shoulders. Yet, as she listed her goals, the bubbling excitement was soon tainted by a creeping thought. What if she wasn't good enough? What if her words failed to resonate? With conscious effort, she pushed the doubts aside, focusing instead on why she felt driven to share. For Caleb, for the women and men who needed to know that perseverance in the face of adversity was possible. Those thoughts began to shift her perspective, and she could almost feel the chill of constraint beginning to thaw. Having devised a rudimentary plan, Sarah navigated online platforms, searching for local community groups dedicated to sharing personal stories. Soon, she stumbled upon a women's empowerment workshop hosting events each month. Could this be her entry point? Her pulse quickened at the thought of blood pumping through her veins, urging her into this new realm. But the shadows of fear crept in again. A workshop would mean sharing her vulnerabilities in front of strangers. Her mind flashed back to all the past judgments, the stares of curiosity, and the hidden discomfort she saw reflected in people's eyes the moment they realized her disability. Yet the memory of Jake's words emerged. Strength doesn't mean there's no fear. With that in mind, Sarah wrote her first email, expressing her interest in the workshop, and hit send. There was no going back now. Later that afternoon, she picked Caleb up from school, a whirlwind of energy bursting forth as he rushed through the front door. "Mom, can we go to the park?" he asked, eyes wide and hopeful. "Absolutely," she replied, masking her hesitations beneath a smile. The sun bathed their surroundings in gold as they arrived at the park, and she watched him play, reveling in the freedom of his youth. Observing him, her heart swelled with a renewed sense of purpose. If she could inspire Caleb's courage, then perhaps courage itself could ripple outward, affecting others. As she pushed herself closer to the swing set, she struck up conversation with other parents, sharing casual stories of life's challenges. Each interaction was intimidating, yet liberating, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt normal. Engaging in simple dialogue also showcased her versatility, her ability to adapt and thrive beyond societal labels and limitations. Returning home that evening, she felt lighter. The workshop was now just a step away, a commitment she had made for herself and for Caleb. Paving her way toward vulnerability was a challenge, but it was one she was more than willing to embrace. Inside, operations began stirring as she prepared dinner, her mind turning over the conversations she'd had. Questions bubbled to the surface. What would she say when the moment to share her story came? Would her voice tremble under the weight of scrutiny? As she plated their meal, anticipation and trepidation coalesced, revealing the duality of her journey. Sarah realized she was no longer just a woman facing a personal battle. She was becoming an advocate for her own authenticity, a beacon of hope for others. And that night, as she lay in bed, another layer of determination washed over her. Was it possible that the real moment of truth was not just the act of sharing, but the transformative power of the journey itself? In the stillness, she envisioned stepping onto that stage, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like thunder. What kind of fear would she confront next? Would she be able to withstand the storm, to birth a message of resilience? Her next steps loomed in the shadows, and she could hear their call, beckoning her to seize the courage that waited just within reach. The morning light pierced through the blinds, casting streaks across the room as Sarah woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Today was different. With the workshop looming closer, she felt an exhilarating rush of possibility. As she showered, she could barely shake off the thrilling anticipation of potential rejection and acceptance intertwined. The very thought of standing in front of others to share her story was at once terrifying and exhilarating. After a hasty breakfast, she spread her materials across the kitchen table, notes pieced together in fragments from late-night musings. Each word she had penned carried different weight, reflecting her vulnerabilities and strengths. With a deep breath, she questioned if she should lead with the raw truth of her condition or highlight her journey of determination. There was no one right answer, and therein lay the conflict that gnawed at her resolve. The time came for her to transition from planning to execution. Sarah felt every emotion swirling within her, excitement battling trepidation. The clock ticked relentlessly, each moment eroding her confidence and slowly pulling the fabric of her courage apart. Grabbing Caleb's hand, she reinforced the notion that this wasn't just about her. It was also about showing him that confronting fears was an integral part of life. "Ready or not, here we go," she whispered to herself, echoing Jake's mantra, a reminder that vulnerability is where true strength manifests. As they entered the community center, the atmosphere buzzed with a mixture of anticipation and nerves. Women floated around her, exchanging stories like trading cards, each more inspiring than the last. The workshop coordinator welcomed everyone warmly, easing the tension in the room. Yet when it came time for introductions, Sarah felt constricted, as if the air had thinned around her. Other women shared their experiences with eloquence, their words painting pictures of struggle and triumph. As each voice filled the air, her inner critic screamed louder. Who did she think she was, trying to take her place among these powerful women? Caleb, sensing her hesitation, glanced up and squeezed her hand tighter. It was a silent encouragement, a message not lost on her. Taking a deep breath, Sarah felt a wave of clarity wash over her. This wasn't about performance, it was about connection. Each story was unique, and hers was no less significant. When her turn arrived, she felt the eyes of others pierce through her protective layers. Heat flushed her face, but something deep within shifted. It was a moment of reckoning. Sharing her struggles with paralysis and the profound impact it had on her identity transformed cold fear into warm acceptance. Each word felt like an offering, a piece of herself laid bare in front of the group. The fear didn't dissipate entirely, but rather evolved into something manageable. As she concluded, a powerful silence enveloped the room. Sarah uncertainly glanced at the faces before her, and then, one by one, women began to lift their hands, sharing their stories of strength and struggle in response. The warmth flooded the room, drenched in understanding, creating an unbreakable bond. It was no longer just about her. It was a collective embracing of shared experiences. After the session, as she walked hand in hand with Caleb, Sarah reevaluated her self-image. The fears once so grasping had abated, revealing a newfound sense of belonging and purpose. She understood now that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a bridge connecting paths of experience. Later that evening, the feeling lingered, and for the first time she allowed herself to ponder a looming question. What would it mean to take her story beyond this room, to a platform larger than life itself? Was she ready to dive deeper, to ignite her narrative beyond these walls? As she turned off the lights, the thought crystallized into a challenge. Tomorrow began the real test. What awaited her as she contemplated the next steps in her journey? This wasn't merely a local workshop anymore. It was the beginning of something that could ripple outwards with astonishing impact. A new adventure awaited, and she leaned into the uncertainty, eager to embrace whatever came next. The following morning, Sarah awoke with a sense of urgency that eclipsed the anticipation she had felt the previous day. As dawn stretched its fingers across her room, she lay still for a moment, contemplating not just her recent experience, but her future. The idea of expanding her narrative beyond the intimate circle of women. The thought electrified her, yet it also sent ripples of self-doubt coursing through her. After a quick breakfast, she dropped Caleb off at school. Finally free from immediate responsibilities, Sarah drove to a nearby cafe, a well-lit place with deep coffee aromas that invigorated the spirit. She chose a corner table, armed with her laptop and a new resolve to articulate her vision. She felt a profound shift within her. Her journey thus far had been riddled with emotional hurdles, but she now recognized that each of those struggles added depth to her story. If she could reshape her experiences into a beacon of hope, might that not help others? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, racing through possible titles for what she envisioned as her first public talk. She typed "unbreakable" and "beyond limitations," but none felt authentic enough. Sarah realized she needed to dig deeper, to strip away the motivational buzzwords that felt hollow to her. What resonated the most with her was the harsh reality of daily battles. Guided by internal clarity, she finally landed on "Raw Truth, Real Strength" as the working title. It embodied not just her pain, but also the resilience she had cultivated along the way. As she drafted her outline, a familiar voice echoed in her mind, the one that had whispered doubt during her introduction at the workshop. Who would care about her story? What made her worthy of a larger audience? This was the restrictive thought pattern she had been battling. What she failed to recognize was how her authenticity might light a path for others lost in the shadows of their own challenges. A part of her hesitated, wrestling with the enormity of the venture. Sharing her truth on a broader scale meant opening old wounds, exposing herself to possible rejection and ridicule. Yet isn't that where real connection thrives, in shared vulnerabilities? The contradiction fueled her fire, prompting her to type faster, words spilling out like a release valve for pent-up emotion. She wrote about struggling with paralysis, but not being defined by it. Hours melted away as Sarah immersed herself in her craft. She felt like an alchemist, transmuting her painful experiences into gold. Ideas materializing on the screen with a clarity she had previously feared to articulate. When she finally closed her laptop, a mix of pride and anxiety danced within her. She had carved a bold space, and the prospect of presenting it made her heart race anew. What if her presentation could go beyond mere inspiration? What if it could influence changes in perception or action? Returning to her car, she caught her reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back was different from the one who had walked in. This Sarah was emboldened, prepared to transform fear into meaningful dialogue. However, the very thought of stepping into the unknown stirred a sense of foreboding. What became apparent in that moment was a deeper commitment. She needed to hone her skills, find the right platforms, and refine her message. With every passing second, she felt a steadfast resolve to face this emerging challenge. The landscape ahead appeared daunting, yet exhilarating. Just as her pulse steadied, her phone buzzed with a message from Jake asking her to collaborate on an upcoming event he was organizing. He had been watching her journey, and his belief in her potential was electric, or potentially overwhelming. In that fleeting moment, the threshold of choice loomed before her. Could she trust herself to take this leap? The weight of commitment pressed down as she sensed that her tail was ready to take flight. But would she be able to conquer the internal adversary and seize this chance? As she took a deep breath, Sarah faced a monumental decision: to embrace this new opportunity, risking everything, or retreat into the safety of anonymity. Which path would lead her to the next chapter of her incredible transformation? The decision hung in the air like an unfinished sentence, its outcome not yet written. As Sarah navigated through her thoughts, she felt the weight of the moment compress against her chest. Jake's message pulsed with possibility, yet it also echoed the specter of her insecurities. Would he still see her potential if she stumbled? The thought was uncomfortable. Taking a deep breath, Sarah scrolled through his text again, reading his words carefully. He was enthusiastic and open, suggesting that they brainstorm ideas together. The idea of working with him intrigued her, but it also unsettled her. How could she share her story alongside his established presence? Moments felt like hours as she battled her inner critic, who warned of exposure that could lead to embarrassment. Before she could settle into paralyzing doubt, Sarah picked up her phone and replied, "I'd love to collaborate. When can we meet?" In that instant, she made a choice to step toward discomfort, a decision that felt as exhilarating as it felt terrifying. Later that day, Sarah found herself pacing in her living room, going through potential conversation starters for their first meeting. What did she want to convey? How could she articulate her evolving vision while still being vulnerable about her journey? The cadence of her footsteps echoed her rapidly fluctuating emotions. Excitement and anxiety slamming against one another like waves crashing on rocky shores. She puzzled over how to present not just her experience, but how she had transformed it into a narrative that could resonate. What lessons had she learned along the way? Each realization sent a ripple of empowerment through her, yet it carried with it the reminder of her fears. Would anyone find it relevant? Searching for solace and perspective, Sarah sat at her desk and reached for her notebook. The words flowed as she jotted down her thoughts. Lessons learned through adversity, moments of stark clarity, and the unwavering strength forged by challenge. The very act of writing was liberating. It made the daunting feel manageable. The more she wrote, the more she saw her own capability, a facet she often dismissed. As she immersed herself, an idea began to crystallize. Sarah could harness her voice and experiences to create a narrative not just centered on herself, but about shared human experience. Could she integrate both her story and Jake's journey without losing her voice? This blend of perspectives might spark a richer conversation and invite more individuals to see themselves in the narrative. Days flew by in a flurry of preparations. She met with Jake, and they found their conversations drifting into deep waters, discussing vulnerabilities, the fear of judgment, and the courage to speak out. Their synergy invigorated her, drawing from both their stories in a manner that felt fresh and compelling. Sarah began to see how they could forge something unique by embracing their different paths toward resilience. When they finalized the outline for their collaboration, Sarah surprised herself with the confidence that sparked. She realized her story was not merely an individual saga. It had the potential to uplift others and ignite conversation around transformation, perseverance, and hope. The emotional investment transformed into a powerful anchor for her emerging purpose. Yet, even amid this newfound clarity, a niggling question remained.
Would her voice ring out loud enough to be heard? The thought loomed and tightened her throat.
What if her past tethered her more than she could navigate? Confronting these doubts became as crucial as her journey itself. The next morning, Sarah stood before the mirror, practicing phrases that resonated with authenticity. I am not defined by my circumstances. I rise because of them, she told her reflection. Each rehearsal fortified her resolve, but behind that determination lingered an uncertainty she struggled to shake off. As she rehearsed for the umpteenth time, a thought crashed over her like a wave. The moment was arriving when she would have to present her truth, not only to an audience sitting there, but to herself and the fears that had shadowed her for so long. With each phrase, she felt the pull of the unknown, inviting yet trepidatious. What awaited her on the other side of vulnerability? The brightness of potential mingled with the dark undercurrent of fear. In that brief moment of silence before she began to speak, she realized there was no turning back. The stage was set, and the possibility was raw, daunting, yet intoxicating. Just as she gathered her breath to confront her fears, another message popped up on her screen. "We have a lot of interest already. Are you ready?" It was Jake again, reminding her that preparation was just the beginning. As anticipation washed over her, one undeniable truth solidified in her mind. She was teetering on the edge of a profound transformation, a chapter waiting to unfold like a dance on the precipice of discovery. But beneath the excitement lay a deeper question, one that echoed in the stillness of her heart. Could she embrace this moment, not only as an opportunity to share, but to be seen, truly seen, in all her complexities? Sarah felt an electric thrill coursing through her as she anticipated the meeting with Jake. The flurry of interest they had received ignited a flicker of hope, but also a surge of trepidation. She understood now that this partnership was more than just a creative endeavor. It was a crucible for change, a test of her ability to share her authentic self while standing alongside someone she admired. Yet, as hours stretched into days leading up to their first joint presentation, anxiety snaked its way back into her thoughts, forming a tight knot in her stomach. What if she stumbled over her words? What if her story was overshadowed by Jake's experiences? Just the notion filled her with dread. She had worked harder than ever to reach this point, crafting her narrative with care, but the harsh inner voice persisted, reminding her of her frailties. Determined to silence her doubts, Sarah devoted herself to both her presentation and her inner growth. Each evening she would light a candle and sit in the gentle glow, reflecting on her path and the hurdles she had overcome. She meticulously reviewed her notes, incorporating powerful anecdotes that resonated with her lived experiences. One night, as she flipped through the pages, she came upon a passage she had nearly forgotten, written during her most turbulent times. It spoke of resilience and reclaiming her identity. The words leapt off the page, stirring something deep within her. Could she encapsulate this essence in her presentation? A resolve materialized as she realized she held the power to present her story not as a collection of vulnerabilities, but as a tapestry of strength and triumph. She found herself sketching a new outline that interwove both her journey and Jake's, demonstrating how contrasting narratives could converge into a unified experience of growth. This creative idea was a bridge, connecting her fears to a shared understanding of struggle and salvation. In the dwindling hours before their presentation, Sarah felt invigorated, yet uncertainty continued its haunting presence. Would their audience respond to her honesty? As she rehearsed the new presentation, she acknowledged the flickers of doubt, but allowed them to pass like clouds obstructing the sun. The light of her emerging confidence began to shine through, illuminating her path forward. The day arrived, and with it came an overwhelming buzz of anticipation.
As they stepped onto the stage, Sarah felt the eyes of the audience on her, each pair piercing through the facade she had often worn. The moment was charged. She was not merely speaking, but unveiling a part of herself that had remained dormant for too long. Jake began, setting the tone with his own vulnerabilities. As he spoke truthfully about the fears that accompanied his journey, Sarah felt a surge of warmth reignite within her. It was an unspoken assurance, one that confirmed she was not alone in this space. A profound connection began to weave its magic between her truth and Jake's. When it was her turn to speak, Sarah stood at the edge of the stage, taking a deep breath to fill her lungs with the courage she had cultivated. She opened her mouth to share her story, her words each imbued with a sense of purpose, a mission to resonate with anyone who had ever grappled with self-doubt. This was not merely an exposition. It was a dialogue, an invitation into her world, as much as it was an invitation to others to join her on the journey. The audience listened, and slowly she began to see their faces soften as they processed her narrative. Yet just as she started to see the possibility of acceptance, an unexpected interruption rattled her focus. A member in the crowd stood up, their expression fierce and challenging. "But aren't you afraid of revealing too much? Doesn't that weaken you?" The question pierced through her newfound momentum, awakening every lingering insecurity she had fought so hard to overcome. Her heart raced as she contemplated the implications behind that question. Would her vulnerability be perceived as a weakness? The audience leaned in, awaiting her response.
With her next breath, Sarah faced her fears, daring to respond to vulnerability with authenticity. How she responded could redefine not just her public persona, but also the way she understood her own strength. The moment had come to confront not only the opinion of that singular voice, but the doubts echoing within her own mind. It was time to reclaim the narrative, to speak the truth of her journey decisively, and to find the real power in vulnerability. As she assembled her thoughts, one question lingered at the forefront. Would she embrace that opportunity, turning a challenge into strength, or would she retreat into silence? Sarah paused, her breath caught in her throat as the challenging question lingered in the air between her and the audience. It was a pivotal moment, both electrifying and terrifying. A small bead of sweat trickled down her temple. Yet, amidst the rising tide of uncertainty, an ember of determination ignited within her. Scanning the crowd, she locked eyes with a few sympathetic faces, those who nodded subtly as if to say, "You can do this." The warmth of their encouragement gave her energy, and she felt her resolve strengthen. This was not merely about her. It was about every individual who had shared their story, their struggles, and their victories. It was about showing them that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a pathway to resilience. "Thank you for your question," she began, her voice steadying as she spoke. "That is a valid concern, and I once believed the same. For too long, I thought that opening up would make me fragile. But through my journey, I have learned that sharing our truths can bring us closer together and can inspire profound change." As she spoke, she molded her response as if sculpting clay, each word deliberate, each idea connected to the last. She discussed how vulnerability had painted the landscapes of her life, how it led her to uncover hidden strengths that lay dormant beneath layers of fear and self-doubt. The audience's engagement mirrored her own vigor. She could feel their energy shift, their skepticism turning into curiosity. "In embracing my story, I have found my voice," Sarah continued, her excitement growing. "I stand here today not just as a speaker, but as a testament to the strength that lies in sharing our authentic selves. My journey does not make me weak, it empowers me. Each scar tells a story. Each failure has taught me resilience.
And the same applies to you. We are all on this path of growth together. None of us needs to hide behind a mask." As she spoke those words, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. The knot in her stomach loosened ever so slightly. The weight of her narrative, heavy and jarring only moments ago, started to feel like a shield. She realized that the truth had its own strength. The room was quiet as she finished, an expectant stillness enveloping the space.
For a moment, it felt as though everyone held their breath together, anticipating the next ripple from this honest exchange. The member who had originally stood to challenge her sat back down, what had once been fierce indignation melting into contemplation. Then, unexpectedly, Sarah noticed a hand shooting up from the back of the audience. This time, the question was different. What if we take that strength and use it to help others? A spark lit in her chest. There was a shift. Her narrative had transcended beyond her own personal struggles. This was a call to action, a possibility that gave her goosebumps. The conversation hadn't just become a performance, it was now an awakening. "Connecting through our stories can create ripples of change," she replied, her voice empowered. "Imagine the impact if we all harness our vulnerabilities to uplift each other. What could we achieve together?" As Sarah spoke, ideas began pouring into her mind. Initiatives, workshops, community engagement. Her mind raced. She saw potential blooming everywhere around her. Suddenly, the presentation felt like the start of something much larger than herself. The atmosphere in the room had transformed. She could see sparks of inspiration lighting up faces. There was an urgency in the air as she visualized a collective movement arising from their shared struggles. It was a pivotal moment, a doorway opening to vast opportunities, where they could forge connections and powerful changes together. But just as elation surged through her, Sarah sensed a counterpoint. How would she navigate this new responsibility? Was she prepared to step into a role that could influence others? The weight of such expectations threatened to dampen her newfound excitement. Caught in that tension, she paused, contemplating her next steps. Where would she take this conversation, and what would it mean for both her and those living their own narratives of struggle? As she stood, feeling the possibilities unfurling around her, the next challenge loomed. The realization that embracing her story might lead her to redefine not just her own path, but also the futures of those inspired by it. Would she seize this chance, expanding her vision to guide others? Or would the pressure of expectations make her falter? As Sarah stood on the stage, fire coursing through her veins, the answer to her question hit her like a rush of clarity. She was ready to step into this uncharted territory, a space that would not only allow her to share her story, but also empower those who carried burdens like hers. The weight on her shoulders transformed into a belief. She could influence change through authenticity. The room buzzed with newfound energy as audience members clamored to share their reflections. Embracing the spontaneous dialogue, Sarah encouraged others to voice their thoughts, witnessing a surge of collective strength. Women and men alike rose from their seats, affirming their dreams, offering stories of struggle and triumph that meshed seamlessly with her own. It was no longer just a presentation, it was an awakening, a shared journey unfurling before them. "And that's how we create impact," Sarah exclaimed, her voice ringing with conviction. "Let's form a network. Let's share lessons learned and provide the support each of us deserves. Together, we can transform our fears into writing workshops, community dialogues, and opportunities for connection." A ripple of agreement coursed through the audience.
Conversations ignited as ideas flowed freely. A supportive community began to take shape, born out of desire to uplift one another. This affirmation was exactly what Sarah had yearned to cultivate, an environment where vulnerability blossomed into strength. The session concluded, and Sarah felt a deep sense of fulfillment settling within her as applause resonated around the room. Profound satisfaction coursed through her heart. She had confronted her fears, and those anxious questions of not being good enough evaporated like fog in the sunlight. In that moment, she comprehended the real power she held in her hands. Her voice as a catalyst for change, unlocking potential and steering others toward their own destinies. Walking off the stage with Jake by her side, she could hardly contain her joy. "You were incredible," he said, his admiration palpable. The validation rolled over her like a warm wave, confirming the growth that had taken place inside. "You led this conversation. It's powerful what you've begun." It dawned on her then that this was only the beginning. Embracing the responsibility of sharing her journey, she recognized an incredible transformation had occurred, not just within her own confidence, but in how she perceived her disability, her strength, and her potential as a changemaker. She was no longer merely Sarah, the woman in a wheelchair. She was Sarah, a voice of resilience, igniting hope in others. As days turned into weeks, her journey gained momentum. With the encouragement of her new network, Sarah organized workshops, supporting others in articulating their truths. She ventured into local schools, igniting conversations about confronting fears. Each story shared unveiled yet another facet of her evolution. With each engagement, the personal growth equaled professional accomplishment, and the deep satisfaction of purpose began to resonate with her spirit. Sarah learned to navigate scrapbooks of personal reflections, threading together narratives into actionable plans. Recognition flowed in unexpectedly. Local media featured her work, and she started to see her influence expand. People looked to her for courage. The once quiet woman, battle-tested by adversity, was now a dynamic force shaping meaningful change. Every new opportunity elevated her confidence and solidified her position.
Caleb beamed with pride as she returned home each day, a remarkable role model transforming not just her life, but his as well. "Mom, are you going to be on TV again?" he asked, wide-eyed with admiration. And she knew she wasn't just chasing success, she was crafting a legacy, a narrative woven tightly with ambition to inspire others. As she contemplated her next steps, an exhilarating anticipation filled her senses. She envisioned writing a book chronicling her experiences, lessons learned, and the power of community. Without hesitation, her fingers danced over the keyboard once more, crafting the prose that captured not just the journey she had walked, but could lead others into a realm of possibility. As she contemplated her next steps, an exhilarating anticipation filled her senses. She envisioned writing a book chronicling her experiences, lessons learned, and the power of community. Without hesitation, her fingers danced over the keyboard once more, crafting the prose that captured not just the journey she had walked, but could lead others into a realm of possibility. Sarah's heart swelled with pride as she penned the closing lines of her manuscript, a testament to her resilience and growth. It encapsulated her unwavering message. Being open about one's struggles isn't about weakness, it's a declaration of strength. This is who she had become, a leader, an advocate, and a storyteller, and she couldn't wait to see how far her influence would reach. Her transformation was stunning, an extraordinary evolution from uncertainty to solid confidence. Sarah proved to herself that she could navigate complexity while championing authenticity, all while inspiring her son to dream beyond their small town.
As she shared her vision with a larger audience, Sarah understood the urgency of her new role. The echoes of her truth reverberated through communities far and wide. It was time to embrace this moment of impact. She had transformed in ways that changed not only her trajectory, but also illuminated the path for countless others. As Sarah closed the laptop, the finality of accomplishment buzzed in her veins. A journey embraced, a narrative shared, a future awaiting discovery. Sarah Bennett had achieved something profound. She had conquered her fears and emerged as a powerful voice for change. And now it was time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will ignite your spirit and provoke thought. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and showcase your support for personal overcoming stories. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. And together, let's continue to inspire and uplift. Don't wait even one more second. Join the movement now.